The essential. Exploration is essential, a must, a daily, lifelong mission critical, if we are to fully discover the greater universe within us and the wonders around us. We can each and all be such eager, intrepid explorers of life and living, who I sometimes style, in this poem anyway, as the outer spacers. The outer spacer is on an odyssey, Homerian, for the 21st century, a mission to explore the farthest reaches of his or her inner galaxy, for which they need an outer spacesuit, the skin they arrived in, live in, wide openness, leaps of courage, and astronautical curiosity. On this vast and varied journey where they may discover the secrets and platelets of their known and unknown universes, ones from wormholes and stars to cosmic rays and solar winds that exist and persist within them, differently inside each of their fellow earthlings, whether they venture outside in or not. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in to the 92nd show in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the deeply shaped coast of New England, of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more poetically, more expressively, more soulfully. Broadcast 91 was imagining all kinds of things, from the fanciful to the possible, in your present and about your future, in your waking, dreaming, and daydreaming hours, moments of living, that place of what if, where your realm of inner and outer experience can be all the richer, all the more inviting, engaging, and inspiring. This week, focusing on what's essential to live your life in fuller, freer, and deeper ways. The truly vital, fundamental, elemental that inspire us to become or stay more whole, more awakened, enlivened, evolved, and flowing with possibility. So, let's ponder together into the cultural commentary, inquiry, and poetry I've gathered for us here. Maybe we start with our beings and how they contain everything we really need to be and become. It's a poem from New York City some years back. You carry your life in a bag of skin and bones, a portmanteau of matter-of-factness, with soft handles and room to hold a lifetime of meals and memories, ideas and injuries. A carrying case you never have to unpack, but sometimes need to fish inside, that weathers with age, that has everything you really need, all the essentials, no matter where you go, or for however long. I have an anecdote about Thich Nhat Hanh that I feel relevant and at the same time would like to mark the passing of him just days ago, and all the beautiful wisdom he gave us, gave the world. So thankful for his presence on the earth and his thoughtfulness. Learned a lot of things from him in his writings. So here's the anecdote. When the Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh was invited to the San Francisco Zen Center, the students asked him what they could do to improve their practice. He had entered a monastery at age 16, was an ordained monk, and had endured the horrors of the war in Vietnam. I imagine they expected some rigorous prescription for deepening their spiritual life. Thich Nhat Hanh's response: "You all get up too early, for one thing. You should get up a little later. and your practice is too grim, I have just two instructions for you. One is to breathe, and one is to smile. Thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh. Well, I was thinking about all the things that I would consider absolutely essential in life, and one of them, unless we want to live in a fog or the dark or down in a well of unknowing or unevolving, is being able to see clearly. This was a poem toward that, here written here in Rhode Island, actually in Weekapaug, October of last year, actually of October of 2020. It's called Seeing Clearly. Without blinders or blindfolds, illusion or confusion, looking consciously, wide openly, without looking away, seeing straight to the bottom of the waters, of yourself, of others, of everything before you, all things below, above, and around your mind, your heart, your present moment, your future. And in that clear blue sky seeing, you find that your choosing, your living, your loving becomes so natural. Moving wisely through your days, engaging the world confidently, becomes usual. And the beauty, the pure joy of being your own person, a one and only man or woman in the mirror and in the eyes of those you know, comes often and easily, so affirmingly. When you're open, able, committed, no matter what or where it leads, to see everything clearly. Well, maybe you'd agree it's essential for each of us to be seen for who we really are, and ideally see others much more fully and truly. So here's Annie Lamott, the writer, from her book, Small Victories, Spotting Improbable Moments of Grace. She considers there the uncomfortable art of letting yourself be seen. Trappings and charm wear off. Let people see you. They see your upper arms are beautiful, soft, and clean and warm, and they will see this about their own some of the time. It's called having friends, choosing each other, getting found, being fished out of the rubble. It blows you away how this wonderful event ever happened. Me and your life, you and mine. Two parts fit together. This hadn't occurred all that often, but now that it does. It's the wildest experience. It could almost make a believer out of you. Of course, life will randomly go to hell every so often, too. Cold winds arrive and prick you, the rain falls down your neck, darkness comes. But now there are two of you. Holy moly. Thank you, Annie Lamott, for that. Contemplate how much good happens when we greatly see and feel seen. This is called What is Hidden is only unhidden from unseeing eyes. To the rest, it's all present, all presence, the tender heart, the shining soul of another, holding their deepest dreams and desires, doubts and fears, beauty and mystery out in the open. And here's a piece of mine inspired by an old African custom that I heard about. This is called Seen with Joy. I see you, says the one, emerging from the forest. I am here, says the other, meeting their kinsmen in the clearing. The same way African bushmen and women for centuries greeted one another, rejoiced in the seeing and being therewith for each other with such exclamation, exultation, is how I, maybe you too desire to be seen, received, and be present to every significant other, friend, loved one, lover. You are here. You see me. I am here. I see you. Well, I feel pure nature is always showing us essence. Think about it if you haven't already. And through this, perhaps, what can we learn from our fellow animals who are only ever and so beautifully, so wildly themselves? Pure presence, each moment. No pretense, ambivalence, no choosing otherness. The great blue heron, the dolphin, humpback whale, the leopard and lion, the mustang, the majestic elephant, and the rest of the living world, the remarkable realm of mountains and clouds, fjords and trees we share the planet with. Paragons of wholeness, perfect models of naturalness, who show us the vibrancy and harmony of simply being at one. Imagine the freedom of denying nothing, being bravely visible in your animal skin, embodying, expressing your own clear and true human nature. From Rob Bresney in his ever-engaging astrologyzone.com e-letter, he talks about our essential natures. Mythologist Michael Meade, he says that the essential nature of every human soul is gifted, noble, and wounded. I agree. Cynics who exaggerate how messed up we all are, ignoring our beauty, are just as unrealistic as naive optimists. But because the cynics have a disproportionately potent influence on the zeitgeist, they make it harder for us to evaluate our problems with a wise and balanced perspective. Many of us feel cursed by the apparent incurability of our wounds, while others, rebelling against the curse, underestimate how wounded they are. Meade says this: those who think they are not wounded in ways that need conscious attention and careful healing are usually the most wounded of all. Good food for thought. Around presence, our own and others, presences, mystical or mysterious ones as well, we sometimes meet and sense in our lives. In this case, a poem of mine from one autumn night on the mid-coast of Maine, above Lake Demarascata. What is this presence close around me in the night darkness, in the deep stillness, enfolding me like a lover with such tenderness, like a mother with such benevolence? Is it the presence of the land and water I lie above? Is it a soft, silent angel revealing its protecting wings? Or my own spirit, my anima, holding me so transcendently and showing me I'm really a body inside a breathing soul? What is this presence? And discovering and tapping into the greater energies inside you is something to explore as well. It may give you the benefit of a precious wellspring you didn't even know that you had, or how deep it might be. Deeper forces found within. Maybe deep clarity of emotions, mastery of patience, self-control, vital focus, wholehearted compassion, lion-hearted courage, a panoply of inner strengths to draw upon here and now. Filling ourselves with light, shining our light of self, spirit, soul into the world. What could be more important than something like that? Here's Earth Man, a poem for we earthbound, starward beings, men and women alike. Earthman, planetarian, worldling, human kindler, Homeric sapien, you, we, solar beings, seeking, drinking, reflecting light. The poet Ellen Bass, she has this poem, "The World Has Need of You." And she starts with a quote from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. "Everything here seems to need us." I could hardly imagine it as I walked to the lighthouse, feeling the ancient prayer of my arms swinging in counterpoint to my feet. Here I am suspended between the sidewalk and twilight, the sky dimming so fast it seems alive. What if you felt the invisible tug between you and everything? A boy on a bicycle rides by, his white shirt open, flaring behind him like wings. It's a hard time to be human. We know too much and too little. Does the breeze need us? The cliffs? The gulls? If you've managed to do one good thing, the ocean doesn't care. But when Newton's apple fell toward the earth, ever so slightly, fell toward the apple. Thank you, Ellen Bass. Innocence. Claiming and feeling into yours. And coming to your days with an innocent eye, an innocent heart as much as you can is a remarkable way to live. I actually wrote this poem just a few days ago for my goddaughter, Axel, on the 23rd anniversary of her baptism. But it applies, I feel, to this call to innocence. Remember our innocence. It's called Anointed. Yes, you were anointed then in a church with prayers and Holy Spirits. But that was just the first of many anointing sins of your body and soul, from the daily sacraments and testaments of living and seeking, learning and loving, from the purity of being always pouring through you, always pouring from you, when you come simply from your deeper innocence. It's essential to make room for silence in your life and spending such time solely by yourself. The more you do it, the more you know that. The British author Sarah Maitland, in How to Be Alone, spoke of it. She lives in a region of Scotland with one of the lowest populations in Europe. The nearest supermarket 20 miles away, no cell service. Far out there. And she wrote this. I got fascinated by silence, by what happens to the human spirit, to identify and personality when the talking stops, when you press the off button, when you venture out into that enormous emptiness. I was interested in silence as a lost cultural phenomenon, as a thing of beauty and as a space that had been explored and used over and over again by different individuals for different reasons and with wildly differing results. I began to use my own life as a sort of laboratory to test some ideas and find out what it felt like. Almost to my surprise, I found I loved silence. It suited me. I got greedy for more. In my hunt for more silence, I found this valley and built a house here on the ruins of an old shepherd's cottage. How have we arrived in the relatively prosperous developed world, at least at a cultural moment which values autonomy, personal freedom, fulfillment, and human rights, and above all, individualism, more highly than they have ever been valued before in human history? But at the same time, these autonomous, free, self-fulfilling individuals are terrified of being alone with themselves. We live in a society which sees high self-esteem as a proof of well-being, but we do not want to be intimate with this admirable and desirable person. We see moral and social conventions as inhibitions on our personal freedoms, and yet we're frightened of anyone who goes away from the crowd and develops, quote, eccentric habits. We believe that everyone has a singular personal, quote, voice and is, moreover, unquestionably creative, but we treat with dark suspicion at best anyone who uses one of the most clearly established methods of developing that creativity, solitude. We think we're unique, special, and deserving of happiness, but we are terrified of being alone. So, muse on that. Muse on that. In his excellent contemplative book, Consolations, David White talks of the value of vulnerability and how we enlarge ourselves by surrendering to the uncontrollable. Let's give you one last bit of that. He says the only choice we have as we mature is how we inhabit our vulnerability and how we become larger and more courageous and more compassionate through our intimacy with disappearance, Our choice is to inhabit vulnerability as generous citizens of loss, robustly and fully, or conversely as misers and complainers, reluctant and fearful, always at the gates of existence but never bravely and completely attempting to enter, never wanting to risk ourselves, never walking fully through the door. He has this poem about using aloneness and solitude to discover vital knowings. A poem I've shared, I think, in one or two other programs going back in time. Sweet darkness. When your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. It's time to go into the night where the dark has eyes to recognize its own. It's time to go into the dark where the night has eyes to recognize its own, where you can be sure you are not beyond love. The dark will make a home for you tonight. The night will give you a horizon further than you can say. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn that anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Thank you, David White. Yes, solitude. Silence is golden. It matters. And openness to ourselves. And stillness. So much can flow in those places. Be still. And listen to what the earth below your feet is singing. To the stories the young and old swaying trees are telling. To the conversations of the hawks and the herons. The whisperings of the planets and stars, the jubilations of the sun, the rain, the ocean waves. Be still and listen with your spirit's ear to everything of note that's here, all ready to be heard. Well, no matter what I'd say, it's essential to break out of any bubble or shell or capsule you may be thinking, feeling, living in, especially at times like these in the outer world we're in and moving through. This is the Encapsulated Man. It's actually a poem from 2017, but seems rather pertinent right now, maybe more than ever, in a way, to me anyway. The Encapsulated Man flies through space and time contained by the culture. Content or not, he stays in his suit and well-constructed shell as he rockets instead of pilots through life, guided not by his own volition, let alone intuition, but by a distant mission control that's mindful of its own needs, heedless of his. He, throughout, rarely, barely, or none, the wiser. Encapsulated man. Let us not be encapsulated men or women. Ever. If we are, bust out now. This is from the Marginalian. 20-year-old Hunter S. Thompson, that wild man of Borneo, his surprisingly sage advice on how to live a meaningful life. Right, the gonzo journalist, godfather, pundit of media, politics, dark philosopher. He was writing to a friend in 1958. And he said, to give advice to a man who asks what to do with his life implies something very close to egomania. To presume to point a man to the right and ultimate goal, to point with a trembling finger in the, he's got this in all caps, right direction is something only a fool would take upon himself. Every man is the sum total of his reactions to experience. As your experiences differ and multiply, you become a different man, and hence your perspective changes. This goes on and on. Every reaction is a learning process. Every significant experience alters your perspective. So it would seem foolish, would it not, to adjust our lives to the demands of a goal we see from a different angle every day? How could we ever hope to accomplish anything other than galloping neurosis? The answer, then, must not deal with goals at all, or not with tangible goals. To put our faith in those would seem to be at best unwise. So we do not strive to be firemen. We do not strive to be bankers, policemen, doctors. We strive to be ourselves. We must make the goal conform to the individual rather than make the individual conform to the goal. And every man, heredity and environment have combined to produce a creature of certain abilities and desires, including a deeply ingrained need to function in such a way that his life will be meaningful. A man has to be something. He has to matter. Well, I thank him. Thank Hunter Thompson for that. I was also brought me to mind of Callings. I mentioned another one or two broadcasts, Greg Lavoie's incredible book, Callings, same name. Well worth a read, no matter whether you know what your calling is and you're going there, or you're seeking it, or you want to inspire the finding of it. But I came across this, the opening of this letter from Krista Tippett from The Pause that she occasionally writes in onbeing.org. Her letter from January 2021 on callings, and how vital those are, especially to the wholeness of self and community and our world. And at the very beginning she says, "Dear friends, I've been thinking this week about vocation, from the Latin vocare, callings. Somewhere along the way in this culture, a person's vocation became synonymous with their job title, but I think of it as the full range of our callings as human beings. Yes, as professional people, but also as family members and neighbors, parents and friends, and members of a body politic. It's not so much about goals and accomplishments, it's about how we orient our lives and our attention and our passions. At different stages in life, different callings emerge and take primacy. What we focus on and pay homage to with our presence, and what we fight for from the ground of what we love. To pick up the question of what is calling me and you is one way to begin the walk, each with our own offering, toward a new kind of wholeness in our life together. For there are callings in a time, as in life." Thank you, Krista Tippett, for that. So true. And so important to remember. So, callings. I thought of my poem that I'd written, The North Star, because following your North Star, your true north, whatever it is, I am encouraging that mightily, dear listeners, mightily. The North Star. It doesn't shine far off. It's closer than you think. It shines clearly, prominently, not outside, but deep inside you, night and day. In the great constellation of your being, your vos major, a constant presence, Polaris in your crown, fixed and bright enough to navigate by, circumnavigate with, to follow, if or when you're ready and willing, on a luminous, longed-for way of life, heart, self, terrestrial and celestial, your ever-faithful, providential North Star. How important is it for you to be versus to do? Is that something you think about? What are the trade-offs, if so, and are they worth it? Have they been worth it? How are you balancing the needs of being and doing in your own life? How's it going? Here's a thought from a poem of mine. It's called a to-be list. The only list that matters today, this day, every day, without further ado, without any to-do. To be wildly awake, alive to self, deeply engaged with life, with the animate earth. To be rampantly loving and discovering, surprising, revealing. To be graceful and grateful, joyful and humble. To be and celebrate and honor being all that you uniquely and remarkably are and can be, can dream, can dance with body and soul, can dive and voice clearly into, bring wholeheartedly in, to this day. In The Wisdom of the Heart, the writer Henry Miller has short stories, profiles, and literary essays are definitely worth exploring that. He talks about the art of living and what's necessary from his point of view, and I love this particular paragraph in there. The art of living is based on rhythm, on give and take, ebb and flow, light and dark, life and death, by acceptance of all aspects of life, good and bad, right and wrong, yours and mine. The static, defensive life, which is what most people are cursed with, is converted into a dance. The dance of life, metamorphosis. One can dance to sorrow or to joy. One can even dance abstractly. But the point is that, by the mere act of dancing, the elements which compose it are transformed. The dance is an end in itself, just like life. The acceptance of the situation, any situation, brings about a flow, a rhythmic impulse toward self-expression. To relax is, of course, a first thing a dancer has to learn. It's also the first thing a patient has to learn when he confronts the analyst. It is the first thing that anyone has to learn in order to live. It is extremely difficult because it means surrender, full surrender. Thank you, Henry Miller, for that fascinating character. That brought me to think about loving, and I found over time as an art and a practice, it's essential, an essential art and practice. It's not casual or accidental. It's so fundamental in intimate relationships. I've seen it. I believe this now, and I keep leaning and learning into it as best I can. Loving another is a heart form, a mind and body form, also an art form, maybe the highest or purest, one to glean, enter, actively apprentice, learn to master, instead of breezing, fumbling, or assuming through it. After decades living and significantly loving others, however truly, however beautifully, it's now ringingly clear how some parts come naturally, while the wholeness, the healthiness, fruitfulness, and resilience of it come only when it's most consciously practiced, when we're not just present, but presence, when we're not simply, but daily and deeply engaged, entirely seeing, listening, leaning into, and communing with another, understanding and nurturing another through all their joys and mysteries, through all their sufferings and growings. And pairing that with a poem from Cobble Hill, Brooklyn from 2017, What to Do? With a beautiful heart opening there before you, a beautiful spirit shining sun-like toward you, a beautiful mind meditating with you, a beautiful body feeling passion for you, a beautiful presence inviting you, but love, greatly love. Maybe it's meaningful to leave words in mind behind at times. I was remembering a quote from the great Impressionist painter, the French painter Claude Monet. He had these words, these beautiful words. Everyone discusses my art and pretends to understand, as if it were necessary to understand, when it is simply necessary to love. Thank you, Claude Monet. Well, in my book of life, as some of you would know from listening other times, magic has its place. And Lamott speaks about it in her book, Stitches, a handbook on meaning, hope, and repair, on finding magic in the mundane. Here's the true secret of life. We mostly do everything over and over. In the morning, we let the dogs out, make coffee, read the paper, help whoever is around get ready for the day. We do our work. In the afternoon, if we have left, we come home and put down our keys and satchels, let the dogs out, take off constrictive clothing, make a drink or put water on for tea, toast the leftover bit of scone. I love ritual and repetition. Without them, I would be a balloon with a slow leak. The search is the meaning, the search for beauty, love, kindness, and restoration in this difficult, wired and often alien modern world. The miracle is that we are here, that no matter how undone we've been the night before, we wake up every morning and are still here. It is phenomenal just to be. This idea overwhelms some people. I found that the wonder of life is often most easily recognizable through habits and routines. Order and discipline are important to meaning for me. Discipline, I've learned, leads to freedom, and there's meaning in freedom. If you don't do ritual things in order, the paper doesn't read as well and you'll be thrown off for the whole day. But when you can sit for a while at your table, reach for your coffee, look out the window at the sky or some branches, then back down at the paper or book, everything feels right for the moment, which is maybe all we have. Thank you, Anne Lamont. So stay open to magic, to making it, to seeing it, appreciating it when it appears, large or small. There's the supremacy of simplicity. There was a wondrousness in that, like the joy of just beholding sea stones, pebbles and stones, as I often do, walking along the ocean, as I did May of 2020 on the in beach in Weekapaug, Rhode Island here, and it's called The Stones. Licked, lacquered, and loved by the sea, shaped, smoothed, and spread out by the sea, tossed, turned, and toned by the sea. The stones, the ocean cooled, cleansed, and colored stones. Wendell Berry, The Apple Tree. In the essential prose of things, the apple tree stands up, emphatic among the accidents of the afternoon, solvent, not to be denied. The grass has been cut down carefully to leave the orange poppies still in bloom. The tree stands up in the odor of the grass drying. The forked trunk and branches are also a kind of necessary prose, shingled with leaves, pigment, and song imposed on the blunt lineaments of fact, a foliage of small birds among them. The tree lifts itself up in the garden, the clutter of its green leaves halving the light, stating the unalterable congruity and form of its casual growth. The crimson finches appear and disappear, singing among the design. Thank you, Wendell Berry. And Ted Kooser, The China Painters, from Delights and Shadows, one of his collections. They have set aside their black tin boxes, scratched and dented, spattered with drops of pink and blue, and their dried-up, rolled-up tubes of alizarin crimson, chrome green, zinc white, and ultramarine. Their vials half full of gold powder, stubs of wax pencils, frayed brushes with tooth-bitten shafts, and have gone in fashion and with grace into the clouds of loose, lush roses, narcissus, pansies, columbine, on teapots, chocolate pots, saucers, and cups. The good Haviland dishes spread like a garden on the white lace Sunday cloth, as if their souls were bees, and the world had been nothing but flowers. Lovely. Thank you, Ted Kooser. What if many of our days, your days, were wonderfully, wildly real, hyper-real days? How enlivening would that be? Well, you can have many such ones. Hyper-reality day. Suddenly arriving in an acutely focused place where you are so alive, when everything crystallizes and hyperreality pulls you into a state of grace, into a discovery so true, suddenly arriving at everything inside and around you. And bringing your spirit to everything you are and all you do, so essential. The singer-songwriter Nick Cave offers these thoughts toward that. Feel into them. See how they resonate. He said, nothing you create is ultimately your own, yet all of it is you. Your imagination, it seems to me, is mostly an accidental dance between collected memory and influence, and is not intrinsic to you. Rather, it's a construction that awaits spiritual ignition. Your spirit is the part of you that is essential. It's separate from the imagination and belongs only to you. This formless pneuma is the invisible and vital force over which we toss the blanket of our imagination. That habitual mix of received information, memory, experience, to give it form and language. In some, this vital spirit burns fiercely, and in others it is a dim flicker, but it lives in all of us and can be made stronger through daily devotion to the work at hand. Thank you, Nick Cave. And I spoke of the applied mythologist a little earlier, Michael Meade, in his Living Myth podcast number 229. He speaks about inspirited breath. Typically, our breath is invisible, yet it's the essence and the evidence that life is present. Human breathing mimics the breath of living forests and also connects us to the divine breath of spirit that secretly sustains all of life. This inspirited breath of life can wither when the forests of the earth are diminished or destroyed, but also when humans fail to awaken and genuinely live the spirit of their own lives. Thank you, Michael Meade. From Soulcraft Musings from animas.org that I follow. Peter Funken, F-O-N-K-E-N, has this poem called Wild Places. And, when I think about the wild places of nature, the pure, undisturbed places of creation, they are beyond essential, literally and spiritually to me and many others, and to him. And he wrote this in 2021, August. When wild places go, we are all lost. A little piece of every bear, of every human living in the gray tenement, in the faceless city, every insect whose name we have never learned. Something slips away from us like an exhaled breath, never to return. And as with breath, one gone is immaterial, 1,000 slipped away insignificant until there comes a point when we know we have few more left. Of course I mourn each extinguishing, like the loss of an old friend with whom there are stories I will never get to share, but my loss is trivial compared to that of the rhino who will never have a place to raise her young, to the redwood whose first millennium of preparation will be all for naught, to the wind who no longer finds the muskox turn to face into the storm, yet longs for the touch of fur, the meeting of an old friend. When wild places go, we go, one cell at a time. But this is not just our dance, not just our game to play. Ours is but a bit part, a supporting role, and yet we have come to believe we should take center stage. No, I say, let us go back to being just another faint voice in the cacophony of life, back to there being wild places that we dare not touch. When wild places go, we are all lost, because without them there is no place for dreams to land. There is no place for hope to set her seed and take her slow time to grow inside each one of us. Thank you, Peter Funken, for that. So what if we were each more like that sentient kind of being, and like the native I want to tell you about, and more in touch with our native natural selves, our wilderness. This is one of the characters from my theater on paper I created in an exhibition called Behind the Curtain, the native who listens to the wind, who dances with the sun, the moon, drinks from clear waters, moves in silence among the deep presence of trees and animals, who honors the sacred land and his embodied ancestors, bows to beauty, lives from pure humanity. I came across the New York Times columnist David Brooks, his book, The Road to Character. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't know about that. And in there he said, we live in a society that encourages us to think about how we have a great career, but leaves many of us inarticulate about how to cultivate the inner life. The competition to succeed and win admiration is so fierce that it becomes all-consuming. The noise of fast and shallow communications makes it harder to hear the quieter sounds that emanate from the depths. We live in a culture that teaches us to promote and advertise ourselves and master the skills required for success, but gives little encouragement to humility, sympathy, and honest self-confrontation, which are necessary for building character. And So he has in here his what he calls the humility code, and I'll just quickly enumerate the 5 things. We don't live for happiness, we live for holiness. Day to day we seek out pleasure, but deep down, all human beings seek to lead lives, not just of pleasure, but of purpose, righteousness, and virtue. The long road to character begins with an accurate understanding of our nature, and the core is that we are flawed creatures. Pride is the central vice. It makes us more certain and closed-minded than we should be. Hard to be vulnerable before those we love, whose love we need. We're all ultimately saved by grace. And grace floods in when you open up space that others might fill. It may come in the form of love from friends and family and the assistance of an unexpected stranger, or from God, but the message is the same. You are accepted. And last, no good life is possible unless it's organized around a vocation. So, thank you, David Brooks. I encourage you to have a look at his book. And I agree, humility is a signal virtue to cultivate, to embody. At the same time, it's critical to value yourself, your never-ending promise and life force. This is never doubt. Your gifts, your greatness, your innocence, presence, possibilities. For you can flow with such light, overflow with such joy, become ever more vital in the world. Whoever you are, wherever and however you are, there are great veins, mother lodes of meaning to be found, to be mined, inside and around you, to make your life all the richer, all the finer, all the more treasured and immeasurable. So become a good seeker, miner of real meaning, a panner and separator of the truly meaningful from the dross, the immaterial. And once found, be a good embracer, deepener, and appreciator of it. You'll know you've struck gold when you feel it in your bones, when you feel it in your heart, when it passes the acid test of what your whole being so naturally knows, serves, and nourishes, the fleeting days, the irreplaceable years and moments you're awake and alive. And dear listeners, would we all agree that gratitude is essential in life, to feel and express, especially for those who have helped us in life and are helping us now, perhaps in many forms, or will. It's called A Leg Up. It's a poem of mine. We've been given so many in our life, so many helping hands, warmly welcoming arms. At times of our life when we couldn't go it or bear it or figure it out alone. Generous, loving, sometimes surprising legs up that enabled us, empowered us to get to a next essential place. Help to be grateful for, to return in any kind to others, wherever, however we can. I was thinking about the great Marcus Aurelius, and he had 3 ingredients for a sane and satisfying life. All you need are these: certainty of judgment in the present moment, action for the common good in the present moment, and an attitude of gratitude in the present moment for anything that comes your way. And back to Thich Nhat Hanh once more. We are often sad and suffer a lot when things change, but change and impermanence have a positive side. Thanks to impermanence, everything is possible. Life itself is possible. If a grain of corn is not impermanent, it can never be transformed into a stalk of corn. If the stalk were not impermanent, it could never provide us with the ear of corn we eat. If your daughter is not impermanent, she cannot grow up to become a woman. Then your grandchildren would never manifest. So instead of complaining about impermanence, we should say, quote, warm welcome and long live impermanence. We should be happy when we can see the miracle of impermanence. Our sadness and suffering will pass. Thank you. Thich Thich Nhat Hanh. So we're coming into the last stretch now of things. And I want to just come back once more to Nick Cave. He said, my duty as a songwriter is not to try to save the world, but rather to save the soul of the world. This requires me to live my life on the other side of truth, beyond conviction and within uncertainty, where things make less sense. Absurdity is a virtue and art rages and burns, where dogma is anathema, discourse is essential, doubt is an energy, magical thinking is not a crime, and where possibility and potentiality rule. The answers to the secrets of the heart may just be there, in the inscrutable dark of the forest, in the unfathomable depths of the sea, and at the uncertain tips of our fingers. Thank you, Nick Cave. Well, I surely relate to this, and greatly, dear listeners, as I feel my own larger role in the world is to be a poet and steward of the universe's soulfulness, however and whenever and wherever I can. Well, the well-being of nature, our earth, matters immensely, and we know we've been touching on that, as I often do. The realm of nature that speaks to us, to one at a time and to many at a time, or can if and when we deeply listen. And it has profound things to say and share. May we never lose its voices. This is the speaking world. The recitations of the ocean's breaking waves, the hymns rising from the green hearts of forests, the narrations of rivers, rhapsodies of valleys, prairies, the whispers passing between clouds and mountaintops, the soliloquies of the deserts, colloquies of blooming gardens, the paeans chorusing through the canopies of rampant jungles, the shared poetries of the moon, stars, and midnight wind, all the sensuously shaped and deeply throated voices of the speaking world that sing through the air, that seek out listening ears. And last for now, we're time to gather here in the great scheme of things. Between and around the sweeps of history, the leaps of science, the frontier crossings of technology, the arcing and blending of cultures and philosophies, are the epically simple wonders of loving and being loved, seen, heard, breaking bread with friends, finding meaning in each day, feeling moments of sheer aliveness, wholeness, radiant here-ness, appreciating all the gifts, the remarkable, irreplaceable gifts of yourself and this heavenly, earthly life. Thank you again for leaning in, focusing in, and feeling in. And to listeners like Greg in California, who said about Broadcast 86 on the light and the dark, thank you for another luminous show. And Robin in Rhode Island about show 30 on longing and belonging. This has to be the most powerful of the broadcasts I've experienced. I sensed a mystical essence to some of the work narrated. Thank you for what you create, share, and channel during these times. And Rose, also here in Rhode Island, who said, your leanings are filled with incredible poetry, philosophy, and literature. You are an inspirational spirit. And Anthony in Nashville, Tennessee, who recently wrote, I love listening. It helps me live my life more poetically. I'm glad and grateful to have a beautiful, thoughtful, and growing listening community like this. So fortunate. If you have a question, comment, or kudo, please send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. My email is colin@thepoetorialist.com. And if you'd like to express thanks with a donation, a contribution, that'd be welcome because they help sustain my creating of these free weekly shows. You can donate by PayPal or Venmo or directly through my site, thepoetorialist.com, or by mail to me at P.O. Box 1032 Westerly, Rhode Island 02891. If you'd like to host me as a patron or know someone who would, as a working poet in residence to produce a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them, to you, reach out and we'll discuss the opportunities. I also welcome invitations to be a virtual poet in residence, a poetic presence for an online community that you may lead or be part of. As always, I seek fellow artists to collaborate with and projects to narrate, events and productions. You can hear my broadcast online on YouTube, all up on the floating poetry playlist. I hope that you'll lean in again, soon again. Until then, dear listeners, here's to focusing and feeling in to what's truly essential in your life. From a deeper presence, deeper listening and engaging, to greater awareness, aliveness, wholeness, to all the wonder, promise, and purpose you can feel and stoke like a great fire within you. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.